The sound of the wind against the bridge was the only thing keeping me from believing the city had stopped breathing altogether. The fog was thick, moving like smoke over the surface of the river, swallowing the streetlights one by one until only the glow of my flashlight cut through the dark. I had been here for hours, waiting for a sign, a sound, anything that would explain what happened to Daniel Reeve. My hands were numb from the cold, but my mind couldn't stop replaying that last recording. His voice trembling, his breath uneven, the words he left unfinished before the tape ended in static. I came here to find proof, to finish what he started, but the deeper I looked, the less sense any of it made. The bridge wasn't just a structure. It felt alive, like something ancient was listening beneath the concrete, waiting for me to speak first. The first time I came here, 3 nights ago, I swore I saw someone, a figure at the far end, too still to be real, watching. I told myself it was my imagination, a trick of the mist. But the pendant I found on the railing was real. I can still feel its weight in my pocket now, the strange symbols carved into its metal edges pulsing faintly in the dark as if it's reacting to the cold air. The city doesn't talk about this bridge. People drive across it every day, but no one ever stops. Maybe they know something I don't. Maybe they can feel what I feel now, that quiet pressure in the chest, like the air is heavier here than anywhere else. My recorder's light blinked red, capturing every breath, every whisper of wind, every sound my mind might later convince me wasn't real. I remember the call that brought me into this case, her voice trembling through the rain. "You're the only one who'll believe me," she said. I wanted to tell her belief wasn't my job. Facts are. Evidence is. But something about the way she said his name, like it still hurt to speak it, kept me from hanging up. Daniel Reeve, historian, researcher, local eccentric. He'd been obsessed with a legend called the River's Witness, some story about the town's founders making a pact they never should have. I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe in obsession and how it can make people see things that aren't there. Still, there was something different about this one. The more I read his notes, the more I saw patterns I couldn't explain, symbols that appeared in old photographs, names that repeated across generations. And then the tape, the one I shouldn't have listened to in the dark. His voice on it, shaking but deliberate, saying, "It's not what it seems. The river remembers." The words didn't mean anything at first, but now, standing here, I can almost feel what he meant. The air hums faintly beneath my feet, like there's something moving under the bridge, deep in the water, breathing in rhythm with me. I tell myself to leave, that this isn't part of the job, that whatever happened to Reeve isn't mine to finish. But something keeps me here, curiosity, maybe, or the sense that walking away would mean letting the darkness win. I take one step forward, then another, the flashlight beam trembling across the cracked pavement. For a moment, I hear it, a low voice, too distant to make out, rising from beneath the bridge, carried by the wind. I freeze. The light flickers. The hum grows louder, like the sound of 1,000 heartbeats buried deep below. I raise the recorder to my mouth, whispering the words I know I shouldn't. If anyone finds this tape, I was here to find the truth. The moment I say it, the wind dies completely. The world holds its breath. Then, from the other side of the bridge, a figure steps forward through the fog. Same silhouette. Same stillness. I can't see a face. Just darkness wrapped in shape. And before I can speak again, the flashlight dies. The only thing I hear before the static takes over the recorder is my own heartbeat and the soft sound of the river whispering my name. 3 days before that night on the bridge, the case had seemed like nothing more than another disappearance lost in the static of the city. I'd handled plenty like it before. Missing husbands, runaways, debts people didn't want to pay. But the woman who came to my office that evening didn't fit the pattern. She wasn't desperate in the way people usually are. She was calm, distant, her eyes unfocused, like she'd already seen too much. The rain had followed her in, tapping against the window in slow, deliberate rhythms. She introduced herself as Claire Reeve, voice quiet, steady, every word wrapped in exhaustion. Her brother, Daniel, had gone missing 2 weeks earlier. No ransom notes, No signs of struggle, just gone. The police said he'd probably left on his own. Claire didn't believe that. She placed a small wooden box on my desk. No lock, no markings, just an old thing that smelled faintly of damp earth. Inside were 3 items: a broken silver pendant engraved with strange intersecting lines, a handful of printed pages filled with notes and hand-drawn symbols, and a flash drive labeled only with the words "The Witness." The pendant was cold, unnaturally so, as if it hadn't been touched by warmth in years. Claire said Daniel found it near the riverbank, close to the foundations of the old bridge. He'd been researching something called the River's Witness, a forgotten legend tied to the town's founding. She said he'd become obsessed, spending nights by the water, muttering about whispers, reflections that didn't match reality, and voices that came with the tide. The note he left behind was short. "If I don't come back by the 3rd night, don't look for me. It's not safe." She hesitated before saying the last words, as if repeating them might make them real. I've heard countless stories, each with its own madness hiding behind logic, but something in her tone made me pause. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from seeing something you can't explain and knowing no one will believe you. I told her I'd take the case. After she left, I plugged in the flash drive. It contained dozens of audio files, each labeled with a date and time. Daniel's voice filled my office, clear, calm, methodical. He spoke about patterns he'd found in the city's archives, the bridge's original blueprints, missing records, repeated mentions of the witness, and how all of them had been quietly removed from public files. But as the recordings went on, his voice began to change, the tone less academic, more paranoid. He said the river had a rhythm, a pulse, that it wasn't just flowing but listening. He said the bridge was built on top of something older, something that wasn't meant to be disturbed. In the last file, he stopped mid-sentence, and then there was only static. When I filtered the noise, I heard it, a low, pulsing hum, like a heartbeat underwater. It was faint, but it was there, repeating every few seconds. I couldn't explain it, and I didn't like that I couldn't. I started digging into the city's construction records. Most of what I found was useless: revised dates, missing signatures, erased names. But one file stood out: the original bridge documentation. In the space where the builder's name should have been, someone had written and later crossed out the same phrase Daniel mentioned: "The witness of the river shall remain unseen." Every other copy of the document had the line removed, replaced with a blank. I traced the handwriting to a civil engineer who'd worked on the project in 1904. He died before the bridge was finished. No listed cause of death. No obituary. When I looked deeper, I found old newspaper clippings, construction accidents, disappearances, strange drownings where no bodies were recovered. The bridge's opening was delayed 3 times, and when it finally opened, the company behind it dissolved overnight. No trace of their investors, no money trail. Just gone. I visited the archives again the next day, but the files I'd been reading were missing. The clerk said they were never there to begin with. That's when I realized this wasn't about a missing person anymore. It was about a story someone didn't want told. That night, I went to the river. The air was colder than it should have been. The water was still, too still, reflecting the sky perfectly even though the wind was blowing. I stood there for an hour, listening. Nothing. But when I turned to leave, I heard it, the same hum from the recording, faint but unmistakable, rising through the ground beneath my feet. I recorded it. When I played it back later in my office, I heard something else layered beneath it, my own voice, whispering words I hadn't spoken. It's waiting. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to reach Claire. She didn't answer. When I went to her apartment, the door was unlocked. The air smelled of rain and metal. Her phone was still buzzing on the counter, screen cracked, dozens of missed calls from an unknown number. On her mirror, written in grey residue like dried river silt, were 3 words: "He found it." I looked around, no sign of her. Just the echo of the city beyond the windows, and that same faint vibration in the walls. It followed me home. By the time I realized it, it was already too late to turn back. Daniel's voice wasn't the only one calling from the water anymore. By the third night, I stopped pretending this was a normal case. The rules I lived by as an investigator, evidence, logic, human motive, had all fallen apart. The facts no longer lined up, time slipped and folded back on itself, and every lead pulled me toward the same place, the river. It felt like the city was leaning in that direction too. Every street, every shadow, drawn to the water like iron to a magnet. Even the people seemed different. Faces blurred in the rain, eyes looked away too quickly, and when I asked questions, I got silence, or worse, that strange half-smile people wear when they know something you don't. My notes began to contradict each other. The timestamps on my recordings didn't match. I'd listened back to my voice describing one location, only to realize I'd never been there. And at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night, my phone would buzz once, display a blank notification, then shut off completely. When it turned back on, a new file would appear in my audio folder, each labeled with the same title, The Witness. I never recorded them, but they were in my voice. I spent the next day trying to piece together what I had. 2 pendants, identical in design. Claire's disappearance. Daniel's files. The erased names in the bridge's blueprints. And that same phrase repeating everywhere, the witness of the river shall remain unseen. I pinned photos, maps, and notes across my wall, drawing strings between them like a spider web. I'd done it hundreds of times before, but this one was different. When I stepped back, the lines formed a shape, circular, almost perfect. It wasn't random. The same pattern was engraved on the pendants. I checked Daniel's notebooks again, the ones Claire had left. Buried in the back, scrawled in uneven handwriting, was a passage copied from an 1898 journal. The river keeps what it sees. The witness sleeps below, bound by stone and silence. The journal belonged to one of the town's founders, a man named Elias Varon, who supervised the original construction of the bridge. He wrote of strange events, workers disappearing into the water, reflections that didn't match the living, and a decision to seal the river's memory by anchoring the bridge to an underground vault. His last entry read, "We have given it a voice so it may never speak again." I found the old service tunnel he mentioned in the city's blueprints, sealed off since 1924. When I arrived, the gate was already open. The lock hung broken, metal twisted as if by force. I told myself it must have been kids or vagrants, but the air inside was too still, too heavy, and it smelled not of rust or mold, but of deep water, old and unmoving. My flashlight's beam cut through the darkness, catching wet walls etched with symbols, circles within circles, spirals, lines intersecting at sharp angles. The same symbols from the pendant. They seemed carved recently, not a century old. I followed the tunnel deeper, my boots echoing against the damp floor. The hum began faintly, so soft I thought it was just the vibration of passing trains, but it grew stronger, steadier, pulsing through the concrete like a heartbeat. Then I saw it, an old tape recorder half buried in the mud. I lifted it out, wiped the grime away. The name Daniel Reeve was scratched onto the back. I didn't play it there. Instinct told me not to. I took it home, locked the door, turned off the lights, and pressed play. The tape clicked, hissed, and then Daniel's voice filled the room. At first it sounded like one of his earlier logs, calm, analytical, describing the same tunnel I'd just walked through. Then his breathing changed. It grew heavier, slower, until another sound layered beneath it, like a second voice echoing his words a split second late. It wasn't an echo. It was imitation. The more he spoke, the more the other voice learned, until it was speaking with him. Then Daniel stopped talking, but the imitation continued. It said, "You followed him. You heard what we buried. The bridge remembers every name it takes." I froze. The voice was low, calm, and deliberate, and it said my name next. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken as if it already knew me. Then silence. The recorder clicked off, even though the tape still had length left. I rewound it, This time, when I pressed play, all I heard was water. Steady, endless, moving beneath everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment felt amplified. The ticking of the clock, the distant sirens, the occasional rush of water through the pipes. I got up to get a drink, and as I turned, I saw my reflection in the window. For a second, I thought I imagined it, but the reflection didn't move when I did. It stood still, watching. I shut my eyes. When I opened them again, it was gone. I decided to drop the case, to hand what I had to the police, walk away, pretend none of this ever happened. But when I reached my car the next morning, there was something resting on the hood, the pendant. The same one I'd lost 2 nights earlier near the tunnel. It gleamed under the grey light, the engraved lines glowing faintly as if alive. When I picked it up, a vibration ran through my arm, a deep, rhythmic pulse that matched the hum I'd heard under the bridge. And then I saw it. Across the wet pavement, stretching from the riverbank, a shadow began to move. It didn't bend with the light. It crawled, thick and slow, like a living thing made of smoke and current. I stumbled back, heart pounding, but the air had changed. The city's usual noise faded away. I could hear only water, heavy and close, echoing from somewhere impossible, like the whole river was whispering through the ground. Then, through the sound, a voice spoke. Claire's. Her tone was faint, strained, as though coming from beneath the surface. One word, listen. The hum stopped. The shadow withdrew, fading into the mist. When I looked down, the pendant was gone again. Only a faint ring of dampness remained where it had touched the metal. I stood there until dawn, unable to move. Because now I understood what Daniel meant when he said the river wasn't flowing. It was remembering. Every secret, every lie, every death that touched it was still there, alive, echoing beneath the surface. The bridge wasn't just built over water. It was built to hold something in. I think whatever they buried under there isn't sleeping anymore. And I can feel it now. Every time I close my eyes, I don't dream. I hear the river. And sometimes, in its whispers, it sounds exactly like my own voice calling back. I haven't slept in 4 days. The city outside my window feels quieter, emptier, like it's holding its breath. The river's hum hasn't stopped. It's grown louder, resonating through the walls, syncing with my heartbeat until I can't tell which is which. I tried leaving once. Drove as far as the outskirts, through the fog and past the old power lines, but the sound followed me. It wasn't just in my ears. It was inside the car, in the static of the radio, in the vibration of the steering wheel, whispering through the air vents. It said my name again, softer this time, almost gentle, like it was asking me to come home. I turned back before sunrise. The moment I crossed the bridge again, the engine died. Everything went silent, and for the first time since this began, I thought I saw what Daniel had seen. A shape beneath the water, vast and indistinct, moving against the current as if the river itself were breathing. I stood there, staring down into the dark, until I realized the reflection on the surface wasn't mine anymore. It was watching me, mimicking every blink, every breath, but just slightly out of sync. I dropped the flashlight, and the beam fractured across the ripples, illuminating the faint outline of faces beneath the surface. Dozens of them. Their mouths were open, but no bubbles rose. Just silence. Then the hum shifted, deepening, vibrating the metal of the bridge. The ground beneath me trembled, and the air turned cold enough to burn. A voice rose from the water. Not one voice, but many, layered and distant, speaking as one. The river keeps what it's given. I stumbled back, but something in me already knew there was nowhere left to go. I understood what Daniel had tried to do. He hadn't gone missing. He'd gone down there, to the vault beneath the bridge, to silence the witness, or to become part of it. Claire must have followed him. That's why her voice was in the recordings, trapped in the current. They hadn't disappeared. They'd been remembered. That night, I went back one last time. The tunnel was open, waiting. The air inside was alive, pulsing like a lung. I followed the sound until it became almost unbearable, until every step felt like walking through someone else's heartbeat. The carvings on the walls glowed faintly, and the deeper I went, the more I felt the river pressing above me, heavy, endless. At the end of the tunnel, there was a door made of iron, sealed with the same circular pattern as the pendant. My flashlight flickered, but I could see a faint light leaking through the cracks. I pressed my hand to the surface, and the hum stopped. In the silence, I heard Daniel's voice, clear, calm, right beside me. It remembers everything we try to forget. Then the door opened on its own. What I saw inside wasn't water, not exactly. It was movement, slow, constant, alive. A surface that reflected everything except me. I should have run, but I stepped forward instead. The closer I got, the quieter it became, until there was only the sound of my own breathing, and even that began to fade. The reflection rippled, and I saw faces again, clearer now. Daniel, Claire, others I didn't recognize. They weren't afraid. They looked peaceful, like they'd finally found somewhere to rest. For a moment, I understood. The witness wasn't a curse. It was memory itself, the weight of everything the city had buried, the secrets, the guilt, the silence. The bridge didn't imprison it. It anchored it, kept it from consuming the world above. But something broke when Daniel disturbed it, and I followed. Now it needed a new keeper. When I reached out my hand, the surface rose to meet it. Cold, heavy, endless. I remember the feeling of it wrapping around my wrist, pulling me forward, the hum becoming my pulse, my breath, my thought. And then nothing. Or maybe everything. I don't know how much time has passed. The recordings still play sometimes, in empty rooms, under the bridge, in the static of the wind. People say they hear a voice speaking softly beneath the water, warning them not to look too long into their own reflection. They call it an echo, a trick of the current. But it's not. It's me. Watching. Remembering. Keeping the river quiet. Because the city doesn't know what it owes the dark. It doesn't know what the river saw. It doesn't know that sometimes, to keep the world from breaking, someone has to stay and listen. Someone has to become the witness.